Welcome to Phillip Island, Victoria in Australia. What a setting we have for this great sporting contest, the Little Penguin Sea to Dune race. Nervous moments always as they gather on the beach, the tension mounting, and away they go. There's the defending champion, wearing his familiar navy blue and white, great waddling style. Another pre-race favourite though, losing touch with the pack. Maybe that's why. A few too many fish in the day's feeding. There's a familiar face, Skip McIntyre, 8 times a champion back in the 90s, a very successful coach now, keeping a keen eye on proceedings. This the leading group, 1 or 2 still able to put on a show for the camera, others just ploughing straight over it. Some resorting to shortcuts. Sad that cheating has crept into this beautiful sport. The judges will have a look at that. But up at the front, the pace is relentless, closing in on those sand dunes that will offer a bed for the night. The fatigue starting to tell. Who's got the finishing kick up on the outside? What a turn of pace from that one, whichever one it is. No answer from the rest, and he takes victory. What a win. There we are, into the Burrow, building an extension with his winnings, and back tomorrow to try and defend his title here on Phillip Island.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Live Penguin TV. My name's Tom. A lot of the regulars will know me from doing the producing role over the last 18 months, off and on. This is actually my first night in the host seat, so be kind to me. I've been here 14 years as a ranger. I do know a lot, but it's in this sort of environment, it's a little bit different. So welcome to all our regulars. Welcome to all our new viewers. A special welcome to the Carlton Gardens Primary School, Grade 3. They were meant to be here this week on a camp on the island and at the Penguin Parade. They couldn't make it because of our COVID restrictions, so a special welcome to them. And tonight I'm ably assisted by a very familiar face to the regulars, so Stephen, popping over.
Hello everybody, I'm in the producer seat tonight. If you have any questions, put them on the Facebook comments. I'll throw them to Tom. He's asking you to be kind. If you want to be a bit tricky, that's all right too. He knows a lot about penguins, so don't be shy. Feel free to send us your questions and we'll try our best to answer them tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Stephen. So we work for the Phillip Island Nature Parks as rangers. We have over 200 staff, rangers, scientists, environment education, the list goes on. Usually the way we pay for that, all that work we do is through visitation. We're the only nature park like that in Australia, possibly the world. Obviously with COVID restrictions and reduced numbers, we've had a lot more direct support from the federal and state governments, which we really appreciate. And we'd also like to say Woomajika and welcome to the, we're standing on Bunurong land, which are the traditional owners. So we'd like to acknowledge their leaders, past, present and emerging. And what I thought I might do just for a change, for a start, in my experience here, a lot of people get a bit confused of where we are. I've had English friends say thought we're Phillip Island off the Queensland coast. There's a penguin island off the west coast of Western Australia. So we're about 140 kilometres southeast of Melbourne, which is one of the largest cities in Australia. And we're right on the southwest point of Phillip Island called Summerland Bay. So this is Summerland Bay you're looking at the moment. The penguin colony starts a few hundred metres to our left, to the east, and it goes right through to the point or the peninsula, which is 3 kilometres to our right, which is the west. So the whole Summerland Peninsula is one big penguin colony, so well over 30,000 penguins. It is the largest penguin colony in Australia, and certainly the largest one you can get access to. So as I said before, this is Summerland Bay, and if I move the camera over. So if you're looking to where we are now, this is Bass Strait out in front of us, that large expanse of water, and that's the little penguin's main habitat. And we're virtually facing south at the moment. So if I was to keep going that direction for about 250 kilometres, I will get to Tasmania. If I kept going that direction for about 3,000 odd kilometres, I'd get to Antarctica. So when we get southerly breezes here, even during summer, it can get quite cool. And as I said, that's the little penguin's main habitat. 10,000 plus years ago, you used to be able to walk from here to Tasmania. But the ocean levels rose and that area got flooded, the land bridge. And that's why Bass Strait's only about 70 metres deep on average, which is quite shallow for open water. And that's why our little penguins only dive down to about 70 metres maximum, because that's, as I said, that's their major habitat. So if I go back to the left, as I said, we're on the southwest of the island. The large landmass at the top there is right at the back of the faded distance is Cape Willamette, which is the southeast. And there's Pyramid Rock, which is about halfway. That's a halfway point on the island. So, as I said before, this is Bass Strait. The penguins shouldn't be too far off tonight. Actually, we've got penguins on the water's edge already, which is a lot earlier than I expected tonight. So thanks, guys. So we'll just zoom in. Oops, too much. So this group on the water's edge there. So Sally's in the box counting the penguins tonight. I was actually counting the penguins last night, and we had 1,446. And this is our first group. So for all our people who haven't seen it before, you can try and guess that the group, the numbers, and throw it up on our feed. And there's no prizes, but there's bragging rights whoever gets the right number or gets closest. So the little penguins' first priority is to cross the beach. As you can see, they usually cross in groups, safety in numbers. Some will cross on their own. They're waiting until it's sunrise, or well after sunrise. Sunset, sorry. But it's dark, and that's when all the birds of prey go home, the large birds. And once they get into the rocks and dunes here, they feel very safe. And often they'll have a little pit stop. They've had a long swim. They could have a long walk home. And potentially they can go up to 2 kilometres inland. So they'll get up into the rocks, they'll have a little rest. They'll preen their feathers, tidy up their feathers. But it is breeding season at the moment. And because they've got eggs and chicks potentially back at their burrows, they're pretty keen to get home. So they often don't stop for too long, like these guys. They're onto their burrows pretty quickly. And as I said, they come up to about 2 kilometres inland, so they cover a fair bit of territory on land as well. And did we get a number in that first group, Stephen?
We sure did, Tom. So in the first group, Sally counted 93 penguins.
93 penguins in that first group, so pretty good size. So hopefully someone got close to that. So the penguins are very quiet crossing the beach. They're very quiet walking to their burrows. They're still worried about predators. But as you see in here, when you do come here, if you have visited here before or if you are coming in the future, they get very noisy and very social outside their burrows. And I'll explain a bit more about that later. They can jump over about their own height, so small rocks like here is no problem. They do walk, have webbed feet, but they only use their feet on land. They tuck their feet away for swimming, and they've got little claws in their feet. And that's why, I'm not sure if we've got a group up there already. We haven't made it there yet. There's a pathway just to the top of the screen. That's actually been worn out by penguins over a long period of time. And they've got little claws in their feet, and that way they can climb up the steep coastline, no problem. but they don't use their feet for swimming. All their swimming's done through their flippers. I've been watching these guys, as I said, for 14 years, 5 nights a week for the last 14, 15 years. We're always seeing new things and learning new things. But I haven't got sick of the penguins yet. They truly are amazing birds. So there's no family groups in this group, no couples. This is basically neighbours coming home. So when they do come in, there's about 6 pathways on the beach, on this beach here, natural pathways. And as I said, they've got very good eyesight, they've got very good night vision, they're looking for landmarks coming in. They'll use the light towers and the stands as a reference, any geographical feature, and they'll look for their landmarks and break away into smaller groups. But pretty much what you're watching tonight is penguin peak hour traffic. It's neighbours coming home. So as I said, no family groups, no neighbours, just whoever's coming home in that neighbour that night. So we'll just go back to the groups on the beach.
While we're scanning, Tom, we do have a question from the primary school from Carlton Gardens.
Yep.
And they're wondering, do penguins only eat fish or do they also eat plants?
Very good question, Carlton Gardens. They certainly don't eat plants. All their eating or feeding is done out in the ocean. And up until about 15 or 20 years ago, most of their diet was pilchards, which are like blue bait if you go fishing, like a little small sardine. There was a few scares with viruses in the ocean. I'm just trying to look for some penguins. We should have another group in the water's edge soon. So up until about 15, 20 years ago, that was mainly their diet. Those pilchards disappeared for a while, for a year or two, and the penguins really struggled. So what they do now is they eat a lot of different fish. So small squid, octopus, cuttlefish, baby cooter, baby red cod, pretty much anything that's bite-sized. So they feed during the day, and in the evening they'll just rest on the water surface, and I'll just doze on and off all night. So we're in between penguins. So we might go back to the...
And I did just hear from Sally, there's a raft approaching somewhere near Penguins Plus.
Okay, so we'll keep on the water's edge and zoom back a bit. Thanks, Stephen. So there's another juice group hitting the water's edge. So Sally's up in there, the skybox counting the penguins. And small groups, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Big groups, 10, 20, 30, 20, 40, 60, 80. We're usually pretty accurate, but we only see the depth. We don't see the width. So often we undercount when it's a really big group. And as I said, they're not mucking around at this time of year. They're really crossing the beach. There's not a lot of sand tonight. Some nights we have 50, 100 metres of sand, and some nights it's like watching Lawrence Arabia coming across the desert. They've got a bit of a hike. It's a pretty high tide tonight, so not much beach. And as I said before, they're pretty keen to get home. So just getting back to that question, as I said, they've got a really broad diet base now, which hopefully stands in good stead in the future with the pressures on the environment. And they need nearly half a kilogram each day to survive in food, nearly half their weight. They weigh a kilogram, or just over a kilogram. So for all those kids in Carlton Gardens, imagine if you had to eat half your weight each day in food. Maybe if you're a teenager, you'll give it a bit of a shake, but not at the moment. Because you see these penguins coming across the beach tonight, but these ones coming in tonight, they could have been out in the ocean for one day, could have been for 3, 4, 5 weeks at a time. They spent 80% of their lives in the water. And as I said before, that's what they're feeding. They'll feed during the day. They'll rest on the water surface at night. They'll just have lots of short naps, doze on and off all night. And when the sun comes up in the morning, they'll start moving around and feeding again. And the reason they eat so much food is because they burn up lots of energy. So they need they swim up to 30 to 50 kilometres in a day. They dive on average about 800 to 1,000 times a day, and up to 50, 60, 70 metres. So hence, as I said, the big diet, because lots and lots of energy. So as you see them walking, they're leaning forward a bit. They've got very short legs. Their knees are actually up inside the body. and that's why they lean forward a bit. That's why they got their waddling action from side to side, but they'll lean forward for a bit of momentum. They can certainly run pretty quick over a short distance, but they can't outrun a dog or a cat or a human or a fox. It wasn't part of their evolution. So usually if they're under threat, they'll run out quick over a short distance and then they'll just crouch down and try and sit it out. And we might just go to the highway, see if we can get, there we go. It's a bit better view. So you can see that waddling action from side that I mentioned. So all these penguins are heading home. They might have partners at home. They might have chicks. They might be looking for a partner. We're well into breeding season at the moment. I was walking back through along the boardwalks through the colony with another ranger last night after we counted them, and there was lots of activity in the colony. Lots of territorial disputes between males over burrows and partners. Lots of mating going on. They're not bastral. We always warn the parents of young kids when they come into the parade during breeding season that they'll get a lot of questions from the young kids. A lot of embarrassing questions from the kids at this time of year. These guys aren't bastral. So, so lots of interesting questions for the parents. And as you see in here, when you do walk through the colony, these guys make about 17 different noises. Most birds make about 6. So some of it's guiding their partner home, some of it's territorial, some of it's domestics. They have little spats and arguments when they get home. And we've heard the lines before, like, what time do you call this? And what's for dinner, not fish again? What's that lipstick on your collar? The list goes on. And just for the kids again, all these rocks that these penguins are climbing over is actually basalt. So it's actually old lava. We had lots of volcanic craters here millions of years ago down on the ocean floor on the ground. So all these dark rocks are old lava. So it's very hard rock. A smaller group on the water's edge. As I said, some will cross on their own, some are braver than others. And they will cross on their own. Once the sun goes down, they're pretty safe. Technically, at this time of night, they could stay on the beach and party all night if they wanted to, but with their dark feathers on the open sand, they feel very nervous. These guys are obviously sending some more penguins to the left, or to their right, sorry, so you can see they're gathering up in the group, so they feel a bit safer. If it's a full moon or low tide, they're a little bit more nervous, but they'll still come in. When it's a high tide like this in good numbers, they're not too worried about it.
Wow, look at
big
this
group.
size.
This is a big group. I might pull it back a bit so you can... So that's a bit of a hard one to catch because Sally will see the depth, which is from here to the beach, but she might not see the width. I was down here once and saw a group about 20 penguins deep and about 50 penguins wide. It was about 1,000 penguins, but I'm pretty sure that ranger probably only counted 400 or 500 penguins because they just don't see that width. You'll see them skipping over the rocks. So we've got a number on that group, Stephen?
On this one that's skipping over the rocks?
Yeah,
Not just yet.
That's
I'll
fine.
radio Sally and ask her.
Okay.
Stephen, to Sally, can you give us a number on that last group that came up, Penguins Plus, please?
Okay, so this is on the right here, these two penguins here, walking the opposite direction. They're actually called shell gritters. They're female penguins, and this only happens during breeding season, or what we call the false breeding, or the autumn breeding attempt. And these penguins are definitely female. They've either got eggs in their belly or they're forming eggs. And what they're doing, they're actually walking potentially up to hundreds of metres down to the beach. They're looking for bits of shell grit, which they swallow or ingest, and it's calcium to make their eggs stronger or to put back into the system to replace the calcium that they're drawn out to form those eggs. If you've got budgies or canaries or any other caged bird at home, you give them lots of shelly sand during breeding season. These guys actually do it naturally. So that's one of the ways of telling male and female, and I'll explain another way shortly, because unless you weigh them and measure their beak, even very close up, it's very hard to tell little penguins whether they're male or female.
We did get a number from Sally, and she It sounded like she was counting another group elsewhere on the beach. She said about 300.
Okay, so around about 300 for that second group, which is very good. So it looks like we're going to have similar numbers to last night, if not more. With the fine weather we've had the last few days, I was really expecting those numbers to kick up, like really big, like we did a few weeks ago, but it hasn't happened yet. And our weather's going to be turning in the next day or two. We've got a big storm front coming through and lots of rain. So purely selfishly, I'm not glad it's not raining tonight on my first streaming, because it makes it a lot harder to see the penguins and a lot harder to do the commentary. So that's purely out of selfish reasons. But I am producing tomorrow night, so...
Well, you brought the good weather with you tonight, Tom.
Yeah, thanks. So, as I said, they're very quiet crossing the burrows. If there was people here, which there isn't at the moment, we're closed due to restrictions to the public. These penguins wouldn't be fazed about the visitors. They're born and bred here. So as long as people aren't yelling and screaming and jumping up and down and flashing cameras, they're fine. If you went to another beach, they'd be a lot more nervous. They barely see the lights we have here on the beach at all. All our lights here are yellow, red spectrum. The penguins see green, blue spectrum. So this is that pathway I was talking about. It goes all the way up the hill over the road into the old housing estate. So this is just the start of the hill. And as I said, they have no problems climbing up that steep pathway. And they're using the little claws in their feet to climb up that pathway. They certainly can't climb up cliffs or very steep inclines, but as I said, steep sort of pathways like no problem whatsoever. So we should have these shell gritters somewhere around here still. Disappeared on me, they're probably gone into the beach. Oh, we just got another group coming through. So I might go to the side camera and we'll try and catch these guys coming through as they come through. So this is our underground viewing to the left. That's another option when you do come to visit. I'm sure we've got a lot of people who have been here to watch the penguins. Hopefully we'll see a lot of you in the future. As I said, we're under restricted numbers at the moment. Apart from our visitation, we also have what we call the Penguin Foundation, which is our charity arm, which is money that people donate. It's a bit like World Vision for penguins. You can adopt a penguin and the money goes through to our research and conservation and our wildlife clinic, which we have on site. And it's a good way of being involved with the penguins and getting a bit more involved. So I think there's a link on the pages to that. I'm sure there's probably a few people watching. We've had a few people, we have quite a few people in the last few months, even with quite a numbers coming up and saying hello to the streamers, to the rangers on the streaming, including myself, even though I've been sort of limited exposure, which has been great. We really appreciate. I know Stephen's had lots of recognition and some of the others, and we really appreciate that. I'm sure there's a few people watching that have been down here in the past, whether it's a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that have had us as rangers on the stands or on the beach. So welcome to you all. So you can see that great little waddling action. It's very effective. And they use their flippers, their wings for a bit of balance as well. Sometimes you'll get these penguins on the right here a bit confused. Oh, and we've got another shell gritter coming through. So she's saying, get out of my way, guys. I'm on the way to the beach. Looking for shell grit. So I can get a bit bumper to bumper when a shell grit is coming through. We've had groups of 8, 10, 12 mothers coming through at once, like a mothers club. And when they're meeting a big group, it gets a bit physical. There's a bit of collisions going on because they're both keen to go the other way. So I'll just go back to the main beach. So we have got a few preening. So you'll see them actually using their beak. They'll be rearranging their feathers, getting rid of any sand or grit. It's very important they keep their feathers neat and tidy. They have 2 layers of feathers. A heavier layer on the outside, a lighter, fluffier layer underneath. If any water gets under their feathers against their skin, they're pretty much history, and that could be through a cut or a large piece of grit. So it's important they preen their feathers each night when they come in. They've actually got a little oil gland on the base of their spine. They'll access that oil with their beak and smear that into their feathers as well. And that's part of their insulation and waterproofing. And that's why they change their feathers over each year, around February, March. we call it the molting. They'll actually grow new feathers, which forces their old feathers out. And that'll be happening, as I said, next February, March. We're way off now. And they'll come on shore for about 2.5, 3 weeks and change their feathers over. So, as I said, this one, they can really stretch around with their beak and get right down to the bottom of their spine there. They're pretty limber.
Copy that, thank you.
And then gradually they'll make their way to their burrows or homes. And as I said, we've got a few sheltered girders coming through.
And Sally said she spotted another raft coming up to Penguins Plus.
Thanks, Stephen. So, there we go. We're on the water's edge. You see them, as I said, grouping up. And we've got those shell girders heading down to the beach. So we've got penguins in all sorts of directions tonight. So we've been counting the penguins for over 50 years. On a quiet night, it might be 100 or 200 penguins. The record for about the first 10 years I was here was about 3,000. In the last few years, we've had a few 4,000 pluses. The biggest night we've had for the last few months, we had 2 nights a couple of weeks ago of 2,300 and 2,000. I counted the 2,000. And the numbers should be really kicking up even more over the next few weeks as breeding season proper starts. I've heard a few chicks in the colony walking through along the boardwalks. I haven't seen any as yet. It's a bit early. But as I said before, there's certainly lots of socialising going on, lots of mating going on, and all the other signs of breeding season. And these penguins are a pretty good weight, so obviously they're finding food pretty easily, which is always a good sign as well. Do you have another question there, Stephen?
Lots of questions in the comments. Might go for this one. We're talking about shell graders pretty recently, and a lot of people are wondering, how long do the shell graders stay on the beach for?
Good question. All sorts of times, actually. Sometimes I'll get a bit spooked, and once they hit the beach, I'll go straight into the ocean with barely a fossick. Others will virtually stay on the beach, for hours on end, or as long as we're here for an hour or two while the count's going on. All types. So some will find a bit of shell grit in the sand when they're walking down to the beach before they even get there. Some will, as I said, have only got a short walk, and some have got potentially up to 2 kilometres to come down to the beach. Last night we had a sort of group out there, about 10 or a dozen, that virtually seemed to stay there the whole night. They were quite comfortable. So yeah, it depends on their personality, it depends on all sorts of things. So, and another one?
Well, this is my chance to tell you that we've got about 5 minutes left in the stream, Tom.
Okay, no worries.
I'm taking a bit of joy in this one because it's a role reversal for us.
Yeah, penguins. Stephen's just told me there's 5 minutes to go in the stream, roughly. I'm not going to sort of go too far over time on the first night, but as I said, the roles are usually reversed. I'm usually telling him what to do, so he's getting a lot of joy out of that. So obviously something spooked the penguins. It could have been it's a bit hard to see, but it could have been a wallaby or something gone through, or bush rat or something. Someone sort of spooked the penguins coming through. I haven't seen any Easter bar bandicoots tonight, so we'll save that for another night. But they're pretty common to see these days, thanks to the work in the nature park, and the riggers would have heard about those. But we'll talk about those on another night, when they're actually in sight. We do have a lot more wallabies down the island and on the penguin prey than we used to in Cape Barren geese. When I first started here, you very rarely saw wallabies on the beach or in the parade area, or Cape Barren geese or the purple hens, the 2 major native birds on the island. But as their numbers are going up, they're spreading out, and there's a lot more interaction between the different birds and the penguins and the different wildlife in general, including the wallabies. So these guys have got very good sense of direction. When they're out in the ocean, as I said before, they're looking for landmarks. It could be rocks or reefs below the water, dunes, hills, trees, bushes. On land, they're using trees, bushes. They'll be using these stands and the light towers, any physical feature as a reference, and they'll gradually make their way home. So These guys are very territorial. Unless they meet a partner from another colony or a different part of the colony, more often than not, they'll go back to within a few metres of the same burrow, whether it's right on the edge of the beach here. Some could be born kilometres down the peninsula in a different part of the colony. And once they've got a burrow for the season, they try and hang on to it. But the males, as I said before, do have fights over burrows and partners. And once they have one for the season, they'll try and hang on to it. They usually stay together for about 3 or 4 seasons on average. There's about a 20% divorce rate for this species of penguins. Every species is different. They're very partner loyal, but once they've got a partner, as I said, they try and hang on to it. The nicest way to put it is they play around big time. And I mentioned about the male and female, about shell gritters. Another way to tell the difference is through behaviour. So other behaviour. So during this time of year, if you get 2 little penguins circling around a burrow, it could be 2 males, it could be domestic, it could be a fight. If one jumps on top of the other one, it's a male and a female. So once again, these guys are climbing all the way up that big hill. And some as into the road into the old housing estate. And we'll talk about the housing estate another time and a bit more of the history of the nature park. It's just you're getting different information for different ranges each night. We do have streaming again tomorrow night. I think Vivian's on tomorrow night and on producing, so we'll be back again tomorrow night. We count them for 50 minutes, so we're probably about 20 minutes into the candle thereabouts. So Sally and Paul will be up there counting for another 30 minutes. And then once we stop counting, then we turn the lights off on the beach, and then we gradually give the beach back to the penguins, so they have the beach themselves. The little penguins actually come in for about 3 or 4 hours each night. We get about 80 or 90% in the first hour, regardless of the volume. And that's why we count them for 50 minutes, and that way we can compare apples with apples last night to last year to last week. So how are we going for time? Getting pretty close?
Oh, this is, you're good. Keep going. I'm just enraptured by your talking.
I was going to wrap it up.
All right,
I'm
one
getting
question for you.
One question, okay.
A lot of people want to know if you have any funny penguin stories or any poo stories or any stories that you like to tell about the penguins.
Okay, I'll use up a lot of my tricks on the first night, but
yeah, that's it.
We often get asked, I did tell this story a few months ago when I was producing, we often get asked whether we can identify individual penguins. One, there's far too many and they all look alike. Having said that, we had one penguin a few years ago, a chick. It was the biggest, fattest chick anyone's ever seen. It was so big that when he chased the parents for food, the ground was shaking. And I gave him the nickname Baby Huey, Huey. For those older viewers, you might know who Baby Huey was. If not, Google it. It was a famous cartoon character a long time ago. With the younger chicks, the last thing that goes, the last bit of down that goes is around the collar, around the neck. We had a young, older chick a few years ago along the boardwalks who had beautiful dark blue feathers. It was brand new feathers, had a big furry collar, but it had a bald head. Had a disease, so I ended up in our wildlife clinic for a few weeks and was cured. That was the ugliest looking penguin I've ever seen in 14 years. So I gave him the nickname Uncle Fester. I shouldn't have to explain that one. We've got Mr. Grumpy, who's at the bottom of the hill at the moment. He's not there every year, but he's very aggressive. He's extremely aggressive when other penguins go past and his partners are home. And we had one penguin a few years ago who when he was doing the crossover at the old building, had a bit of an injury, and he used to fry up one leg very high as he was marching across, and he looked a bit like a German stormtrooper, so he stood out a bit as well, but they're very much the exceptions rather than the rules. Usually they look pretty much alike. But if you keep your eyes open and you've got a good sense of humour and good observatory skills, you tend to notice these things. So as I said, there's a few examples that I can think off the top of my head. So we might wrap it up pretty soon. So as I said before, the streaming's on every night for a while. I'll be back tomorrow night. different ranges are doing it. Thank you for listening tonight. As I said, we get a big kick out of it. We're not getting visitors at the moment. We get a bit sick of talking to the same 3 or 4 or 5 ranges we're working with, so it's good to talk to someone else and have a bit more sort of different environment. We look forward to seeing you in the future, wherever that may be. Hopefully everyone stays safe and stays well wherever you may be. I know it's been a hard haul for a lot of people in different places. I know we know from feedback this helps a lot, and it helps us as well. Thank you for listening, and have a great night, and we'll see you soon. And if you want to copy in, Stephen.
I'll say goodbye. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for the wonderful questions. We'll see you all again next time.
Okay, see you later. Oops.